The night was thick with whispers when Persephone vanished. The earth split open, swallowing her whole as Hades dragged her into the underworld. But one figure stood at the crossroads, torchlight flickering against the darkness: Hecate, the goddess who heard the echoes of the unseen. She alone guided Demeter through the shadows, her triple form piercing the veil between worlds. This is the power of Hecate, the ancient goddess of witchcraft, magic, and the liminal spaces where reality bends. She is the keeper of secrets, the patron of witches, and the guardian of the crossroads where choices become destiny. Today, we unravel 30 stories of her enigmatic legacy, from her birth among the Titans to her whispered influence in modern spells. Each tale reveals why Hecate's name still chills and thrills those who walk the hidden paths. Will you follow her torchlight? Long before the Olympians claimed their thrones, the cosmos belonged to the Titans, primordial beings of immense power. Among them stood Perseus, the destroyer, and Asteria, the starry one, whose union brought forth a daughter unlike any other. Hecate emerged from this lineage, a goddess forged in the fires of the old world. While most Titans fell to Zeus's thunderbolts during the Great War, Hecate's fate was different. She walked the razor's edge between eras, neither fully cast down nor entirely absorbed into the new order. This liminality defined her. As the daughter of destruction and starlight, she became the keeper of thresholds where night meets day, where the living brush against the dead, where magic bleeds into the mundane. Her Titan blood granted her dominion over earth, sky, and sea, a triad of power that even Zeus dared not strip away. To understand Hecate is to stand at that first crossroads of her birth, where the ancient and the eternal collide. But as the winds of war shifted, so too did Hecate's path. While the Titanomachy raged, a cataclysmic clash between the old gods and the new Hecate stood apart, a solitary figure amid the chaos. Unlike her kin, who fought fiercely against Zeus and his Olympians, she chose neither side outright. Some whisper she remained neutral, a guardian of balance, while others claim she secretly aided Zeus, foreseeing the dawn of a new era. Legends speak of her slipping through battlefields like shadow, offering cryptic guidance to the thunder god, her wisdom sharper than any blade. When the dust settled and the Titans fell, Zeus remembered her loyalty, or perhaps her cunning. Instead of casting her into Tartarus, he honored her with a rare gift: dominion over earth, sea, and sky, a triad of power mirroring her own liminal nature. This was no mere reward, it was recognition. Hecate had navigated the war's turmoil without bending knee or breaking stride, and in doing so, she carved her place in the pantheon. Her authority stretched beyond the Olympians' reach, a reminder that even in victory, some forces remain untamed. Now we step into a quieter moment where the echoes of war give way to whispered counsel. Among the gods, Zeus may have ruled the skies, but he knew the value of wisdom beyond brute strength. And so, in the halls of Olympus, Hecate found herself not as a subject, but as a trusted advisor, a voice the king of gods could not ignore. Here was the goddess of magic, whose very nature defied the rigid order of the Olympians, standing shoulder to shoulder with the thunderer himself. Zeus, in a move that stunned both mortals and immortals, granted her a share of power over all realms: earth, sea, and sky, a privilege reserved for none other. This was no empty gesture. Hecate's insights cut through deception like her torches through darkness, and Zeus, for all his might, recognized that some truths could only be uncovered by one who walked the unseen path. The irony was not lost on the pantheon, the master of lightning seeking guidance from the mistress of shadows. Yet this alliance was more than practicality. It was a testament to Hecate's unmatched ability to navigate the delicate balance between chaos and control. Where others saw contradiction, she wielded harmony, proving that even the mightiest king sometimes needs a witch's wisdom. But even the wisest advisors need tools to light their way. And so we come to the story of Hecate's torches, gifts forged not in the fires of Olympus, but in the smithy of its most cunning artisan. Hephaestus, the god of craftsmanship, saw in Hecate something rare, a deity who didn't flinch from the shadows. Where others carried weapons, she needed something subtler, and so he shaped for her twin torches, their flames eternal, their light piercing even the deepest gloom. These were no ordinary fire. They burned with a cold brilliance, illuminating paths unseen by mortal eyes. With them, Hecate could guide lost souls through the night, her light a beacon for those trapped between worlds. It's no accident that these very torches would later become her signature symbols of her role as the one who walks the boundary between life and death. For where others saw only darkness, Hecate's flames revealed hidden truths, leading the way not just through physical night, but through the mysteries of the underworld itself. And so, with Hephaestus's gift, the goddess of Crossroads became something more, a guide for ghosts, a light bearer for the restless dead, her torches cutting through the veil between realms. Yet even with her torches in hand, Hecate's true test as a guide between worlds was yet to come, a moment that would bind her fate to one of mythology's most haunting tales. When Hades, lord of the underworld, stole Persephone away to his shadowed realm, it was Hecate who heard the young goddess's cries echoing through the earth. While Demeter, Persephone's mother, raged and mourned under the withering sun, Hecate acted. Clutching her torches, she descended where no Olympian dared to tread into the labyrinth of the underworld itself. Her flames carved a path through the choking darkness, revealing hidden passages and whispering shades. It was Hecate who first found Persephone, not as a prisoner in chains, but as a figure caught between two worlds, her fingers stained with pomegranate seeds. Here, the goddess of Crossroads faced her own moment of choice, to defy Hades or to negotiate the impossible balance between life and death. In the end, Hecate's wisdom prevailed. She became Persephone's eternal companion in the underworld, a guardian who walked beside her during those bleak months beneath the earth. And when Persephone rose each spring, Hecate's torches lit her way back to the living world, a cycle of loss and return that mirrored Hecate's own power over thresholds. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was the moment Hecate cemented her role as the silent architect of transitions, the one who ensured that even in the darkest descent there was always a path home. But Hecate's influence didn't end with guiding lost souls. She also shaped the hands that wielded magic's most dangerous arts. Enter Medea, the sorceress princess of Colchis, whose name would become synonymous with witchcraft's darkest edges. Hecate didn't merely inspire Medea, she became her patron, her teacher, and the hidden force behind her most terrifying powers. Under Hecate's watchful gaze, Medea learned to twist the very roots of nature to her will. The goddess taught her to harvest midnight blossoms that could heal or poison, to whisper spells that could bend the stars, and to brew potions that could unravel fate itself. When Medea famously helped Jason steal the golden fleece, it wasn't just cunning at work, it was Hecate's magic flowing through her rituals. She anointed Jason with enchanted ointment, rendering him invincible, and charmed the dragon guarding the fleece into slumber. But their bond took a darker turn when Medea's love for Jason curdled into vengeance. The spells she used to slaughter his new bride, a gown that burned flesh, a crown that seared like the sun, were pure Hecate, a brutal reminder of the goddess's dual role as nurturer and destroyer. Even Medea's final act, the murder of her own children, carried the chilling logic of Hecate's Crossroads. Sometimes destruction is the only path forward. Through Medea, Hecate's legacy as the matron of witches was sealed. Here was no passive deity, but a mentor who empowered women to wield magic as a weapon, a tool, and a means of survival in a world that feared their power. Their relationship blurred the line between divine favor and mortal ambition, proving that Hecate's gifts came with a price, and her lessons were written in blood as often as they were in starlight. But Hecate's magic wasn't just about spells and potions. It also walked on 4 legs and howled in the night. Among her most chilling companions were her pack of hellhounds, shadowy beasts with eyes like glowing embers and voices that could freeze blood. These weren't ordinary dogs, they were guardians of the unseen, sniffing out the restless dead and herding lost souls toward the underworld. Where Hecate walked, her hounds followed, their barks echoing like omens in the dark. And the hounds weren't alone. Hecate's entourage included a procession of spirit souls caught between worlds, drawn to her torches like moths to flame. In ancient Greece, necromancers whispered that if you stood at a crossroads at midnight, you might glimpse her spectral parade, shades of the unburied, the wronged, and the forgotten, all trailing behind the goddess as she moved between realms. This wasn't just superstition, it was part of her sacred duty as a psychopomp, a guide for the dead. Unlike Hermes, who escorted souls to the afterlife with swift certainty, Hecate's methods were slower, more deliberate. She didn't just lead the dead, she listened to them. Her hounds sniffed out unresolved grudges, and her torches illuminated the secrets they carried. Some say she even gave voice to the voiceless, allowing the dead one last moment of recognition before their final journey. This eerie retinue wasn't just for show. In rituals, Hecate's followers would leave offerings of meat for her hounds and honey cakes for the ghosts, hoping to earn her favor, or at least avoid her wrath. To ignore these spirits was to risk attracting their attention, and as any Greek would tell you, a haunted crossroads was no place to linger after dark. Yet there was a strange comfort in Hecate's ghostly companions. They reminded the living that death wasn't an end, just another path, one that the goddess of the crossroads knew better than anyone. And if her hounds howled your name, it wasn't always a warning. Sometimes it was an invitation. But not all who encountered Hecate's power did so willingly. Some learned the hard way that ignoring her sacred rites came with a price. Take the tale of a fisherman from the shores of Thessaly, a man who thought little of the old ways. One evening, as he hurried home with his catch, he passed a crumbling shrine at a lonely crossroads, a place where locals left offerings to Hecate, eggs, garlic, and small coins to keep her favor. But this fisherman scoffed. He tossed a fishbone onto the shrine as a joke, mocking those who still clung to superstition. That night, the sea turned against him. His nets came up empty, his boat leaked though no hole could be found, and a thick mist rolled in, disorienting even the most seasoned sailors. Then came the howls, not of wolves, but of something far worse. Hecate's hounds, their barks seemed to come from all directions, driving him toward the cliffs. In desperation, he stumbled back to the crossroads at dawn, only to find his fishbone replaced with a dead crow, its wings spread like a warning. The message was clear. Hecate's wrath wasn't swift like Zeus's lightning. It was slow, creeping, and inescapable. The fisherman's luck never returned. His nets rotted, his family fell ill, and whispers followed him. He angered the lady of the crossroads. Only when he returned with proper offerings, a black lamb and honey poured over the stones, did the curse lift. But the lesson lingered. This story wasn't just a scare tactic. It revealed a deeper truth. Hecate guarded the boundaries between respect and arrogance, and her punishments were as much about justice as they were about fear. To ignore her was to invite chaos, but to honor her, even grudgingly, was to survive the night. And speaking of survival, not all who sought Hecate's favor did so out of desperation. Some came willingly, drawn by the promise of power, like the witches of Thessaly, whose pacts with the goddess would become the stuff of legend. But that's a tale for another time. But while some feared Hecate's wrath, others were drawn to the eerie beauty of her nightly gatherings. Picture this: a moon hanging heavy in the sky, casting silver light over a deserted crossroads. Shadows twist and flicker, not from wind, but from figures moving just beyond sight. This was Hecate's hour when she led her ghostly entourage through the world of the living. Her processions were no quiet affair. The air hummed with the whispers of restless spirits, the clatter of hooves from unseen horses, and the baying of her hound sounds that sent villagers bolting their doors. Yet for those brave or foolish enough to peek, the sight was unforgettable. Hecate strode at the front, her twin torches cutting through the dark, flanked by souls neither fully dead nor alive. Some were ancient shades, others the recently departed, all bound to her as she wandered the boundaries between worlds. These moonlit revels weren't just spectacle, they were a glimpse into the raw power of the in-between. Ancient Greeks believed these nights blurred the line between mortal and spirit, a time when magic thrummed in the air like static before a storm, and that belief didn't fade with the old gods. Centuries later, medieval Europeans told tales of the Wild Hunt, a ghostly cavalcade led by figures like Odin or Diana, chasing lost souls across the sky. Sound familiar? Hecate's processions planted the seeds for which Sabbaths too, those infamous midnight gatherings where witches supposedly danced with demons. Historians trace the imagery back to her, the torchlight, the spirits, the untamed energy of the night. Even Halloween, with its costumed parades and tales of wandering ghosts, carries echoes of her rites. After all, what's trick-or-treating if not a playful nod to leaving offerings at the crossroads? So the next time you hear a dog howl at midnight or feel a chill on a moonlit path, remember, you might just be brushing against the hem of Hecate's cloak. And if you listen closely, you could catch the faintest echo of laughter on the wind, a reminder that some boundaries were never meant to stay closed. Now, while her moonlit wanderings stirred whispers, Hecate's influence wasn't limited to ghostly parades. Some sought her out for far darker bargains, like the witches of Thessaly, who traded loyalty for power in ways that would make even the bravest shudder. But that's a story woven with poison and ambition, one we'll unravel next. But ambition has its price, and few learned that lesson more bitterly than the witches of Thessaly. These sorceresses didn't just whisper prayers to Hecate, they carved their devotion into flesh and bone. One tale tells of a woman named Nyxene, a weaver's daughter who hungered for power beyond her station. Night after night, she slipped away to a crumbling shrine at the crossroads, leaving offerings of honey and blackened barley cakes. Then came the night Hecate answered. The goddess didn't appear as some shimmering vision. Nyxene simply felt the air grow thick, the scent of damp earth rising as if the ground itself had exhaled. A voice slithered through the dark, not in her ears but in her mind, curling around her thoughts like smoke. The bargain was simple, an unwavering loyalty in exchange for the secrets of root and venom, the kind of magic that could wither crops or stop a man's heart mid-beat. Nyxene agreed without hesitation. At first, the gift seemed worth the cost. Her hands could brew potions that made lovers obsessed and enemies tremble. She learned to draw down the moon's power, weaving its silver light into curses. But Hecate's favor came with chains. The more Nyxene used her gifts, the more the goddess demanded, not just offerings but acts. A neighbor's prized goat found dead at dawn. A rival's child stricken with fever. Each task left her soul a little darker, a little colder. The breaking point came when Hecate commanded her to betray her own family. Nyxene refused, and that's when she learned the true meaning of the witch's pact. The magic she'd relied on turned inward, her own spells twisting against her. Some say she crumbled to dust where she stood. Others claim she wanders still, bound to Hecate's processions as one more ghost among many. This wasn't just a story to scare children. Thessalian witches became infamous across Greece, their reputation a warning. Power from the gods was never free, and Hecate, she wasn't cruel, but she wasn't forgiving either. To seek her favor was to walk a knife's edge one misstep, and the darkness would claim you whole. Yet even as Nyxene's tale faded into legend, others still dared to knock at Hecate's door. Some sought healing instead of harm, like the poisonous blooms in her mythic garden, a place where death and remedy grew side by side. But that's a thornier story altogether. But the path to Hecate's gifts didn't always lead to ruin. Some sought her not for curses, but for cures, though even then, the line between poison and remedy was perilously thin. Hidden deep in the shadows where moonlight barely touched, legend speaks of Hecate's garden, a place where the earth itself seemed to whisper secrets. Here plants grew with strange, twisting leaves, their roots steeped in power. Aconite, with its deceptively delicate purple blooms, could stop a heart or ease a king's torment, depending on the hands that harvested it. This wasn't just a witch's apothecary, it was a reflection of Hecate herself. The goddess who guided lost souls also knew the art of unraveling them. Her garden thrived on contradiction. Belladonna could steal sight or sharpen vision, while mandrake roots shrieked when uprooted, their cries carrying either a death sentence or salvation. Ancient healers whispered that to walk among these plants was to dance with the goddess's dual nature. One wrong step, one misjudged dose, and the healer became the executioner. Yet for those who understood the balance, Hecate's garden offered rare boons. Midwives braved its edges for ergot to ease childbirth, while warriors sought wolfsbane to numb wounds. Even the dead weren't beyond its reach. Some claimed the right mixture could let a mourner speak with ghosts one last time, but the garden demanded respect. Those who took without permission found their hands blistered, their minds clouded with visions of the very spirits they'd hoped to command. Hecate's poison garden wasn't just a myth. It was a lesson carved into leaf and stem. Magic, like nature, refused to be neatly divided. What healed could also harm. What gave life could just as easily take it. And the goddess who ruled over it all, she was neither savior nor destroyer, but the keeper of the threshold between, where every cure held a shadow and every poison a sliver of grace. And as whispers of her garden spread, so too did tales of those who tried to master its secrets. Some succeeded, most did not, but that's a story for another Crossroads. But the threads of fate are never so easily cut, and Hecate's power stretched even into the realm where mortals feared to tread. When the hero Heracles faced his impossible task, to wrestle death itself for the soul of Alcestis, it was the goddess of Crossroads who tipped the scales. Alcestis, the queen who had willingly traded her life for her husband's, now lingered at the threshold between worlds, her sacrifice binding her to the shadows. Yet Heracles, fueled by grief and fury, refused to let her go. Here, in the dim space where even the bravest heroes hesitated, Hecate's torches flickered to life. Some say she whispered the secret to finding death's hidden path. Others claim she lent Heracles her own hounds to track the unseen. But one truth remained: without her guidance, even the strongest mortal would have stumbled blindly into the dark. The battle that followed was brutal, bone against muscle, breath against silence, but when Heracles emerged victorious, Alcestis' soul glowing faintly in his arms, it was Hecate who ensured the way back stayed open. This wasn't just a tale of heroism. It was proof of the goddess's dominion over the fragile veil between living and dead. She didn't defy the natural order, she navigated it, a keeper of thresholds who understood when to bend the rules. Alcestis' return wasn't a resurrection, it was a negotiation, a fleeting balance struck between mercy and inevitability. And though her second life would always carry the chill of the underworld, that was the price of crossing Hecate's domain. The story echoes a truth as old as the first funeral pyre. Death may be inevitable, but its grip isn't absolute. Not when the goddess of magic stands at the crossroads, her torches cutting through the dark. Yet even as Hecate guided souls through the shadows, not all who sought her aid found salvation. Now we turn to a tale where the goddess's magic took a darker turn: the tragic fate of Lamia. Once a radiant queen beloved by Zeus, her happiness drew the wrath of Hera, who in jealous fury cursed her with an unthinkable hunger. Stripped of her children and driven to madness, Lamia's grief twisted her into something monstrous, a hollow-eyed creature who stalked the night, stealing the young to sate her endless sorrow. Here the stories diverge. Some say Hecate took pity on Lamia, offering her the power to remove her own eyes so she might never again witness the faces of the children she devoured. Others whisper that the goddess, ever a guardian of boundaries, cursed her further, binding Lamia to the nightmares of mortals as a warning against crossing the gods. What remains clear is Hecate's hand in shaping Lamia's fate, blurring the line between mercy and punishment. This wasn't mere vengeance. Lamia's transformation revealed the cruel balance of divine justice. Hecate, keeper of thresholds, understood the weight of curses as deeply as blessings. To some, Lamia became a demon to fear. To others, she was a mother eternally mourning, her wails echoing at crossroads where Hecate's torches flickered. A reminder that even monsters are born from broken hearts. The tale endures not just as a myth but as a chilling question. When the gods play with mortal lives, who truly bears the cost? And so the night grew heavier with Lamia's legend, her story woven into the fabric of Hecate's domain, where magic could heal or hollow and every choice cast a shadow. But where Lamia's tale blurred the lines of mercy and punishment, another story reveals Hecate's fierce defiance against the gods themselves. Picture this: a moonlit crossroads, thick with tension, as two masters of boundaries stand locked in silent challenge. Hermes, the swift-footed messenger of Olympus, had come to claim a soul destined for the underworld. Yet Hecate, torch in hand, refused to yield. This was no ordinary spirit, but one who had sworn an oath in her name, and the goddess of witches did not take such vows lightly. The duel began not with blades, but with cunning. Hermes, ever the trickster, wove illusions to mislead, his words as slippery as his winged sandals. But Hecate countered with older magic, her three faces seeing through every deception. Shadows twisted at her command, and the very earth seemed to whisper secrets only she could decipher. It was a battle of wits as much as power, a test of who truly ruled the spaces between worlds. In the end, neither emerged victorious. The soul in question slipped free, vanishing into the night as both deities turned their sharp gazes toward the horizon. Some say this clash birthed the eternal rivalry between witches and messengers, between those who walk hidden paths and those who serve the will of Olympus. Yet beneath the rivalry lay grudging respect, for who else but Hermes could match Hecate's craft, and who but Hecate could outwit the god's own herald? This rare myth reminds us that even deities have their limits, and that the crossroads where choices collide remain the one place where no single power holds absolute sway. And so the torchlight flickers on, casting long shadows where the old ways and the new forever dance their uneasy truce. But while Hecate's duel with Hermes revealed her cunning, her role as a seer of hidden truths ran even deeper. Picture her three-faced statues standing at forgotten crossroads, each visage gazing into a different realm, past, present, and future. Unlike the polished prophecies of Delphi, where Apollo's priestesses spoke in riddles bathed in sunlight, Hecate's oracles thrived in the liminal dark. Travelers who dared approach her shrines at midnight might hear whispers curling from all three mouths at once, a chorus of truths too raw for daylight. Some say her prophecies came twisted like roots gnarled beneath the earth. A farmer asking for a bountiful harvest might instead learn of his own death by winter's first frost. A queen seeking victory in war could be shown the moment her throne would crumble. Hecate's visions refused to flatter or comfort. They laid bare the unvarnished currents of fate, forcing mortals to confront what even the gods at Delphi softened with ambiguity. This uncanny gift tied her to the older, wilder magic that predated Olympus. Before Apollo claimed Delphi, the fissure there was said to breathe the same chthonic truths Hecate channeled. Her crossroads became altars where the veil thinned, where the dead might murmur through her statues, and where those brave enough to listen could glimpse the weaving of destiny itself, threads tangled and unspooling in the same breath. Yet her prophecies carried a warning. Knowledge won in shadows demanded a price. To hear Hecate's voice was to step into the current of fate, and not all who waded in could find their way back to shore. But while Hecate's prophecies revealed harsh truths, her role as a guardian of forbidden knowledge was even more unforgiving. Nowhere was this clearer than in the legend of the witch trials of Colchis, where those who sought her darkest secrets faced a gauntlet of terror. In the mist-shrouded land of Colchis, whispered tales spoke of a hidden grove where Hecate tested the worth of would-be witches. The trials began at midnight when the goddess herself appeared as a towering figure wreathed in black flame. The first challenge was simple: survive. Aspirants were given a single torch and sent into a labyrinth of thorned vines that pulsed like living things. Those who hesitated found the thorns closing around them, draining their blood to feed the grove. Only the ruthless, those willing to carve their path with fire or blade, emerged on the other side. The second trial was crueler still. Hecate demanded a sacrifice not of animals but of memory. Each witch-to-be had to drink from a chalice filled with water from the river Lethe, forgetting their dearest joy. Some wept as the faces of loved ones slipped from their minds. Others went mad, clawing at their own skin as if to dig the lost moments from their flesh. But those who endured stepped forward, hollowed out, ready to be remade in Hecate's image. The final test was the most terrible of all. The survivors stood before a mirror that showed not their reflections but their deepest fears given form. To pass, they had to reach into the glass and pull the horror into the waking world, embracing it as part of themselves. Few could stomach such a bargain. Those who did emerged forever changed, their eyes gleaming with the cold light of the underworld. Hecate's trials were never about fairness. They were about proving who had the will to wield power without flinching. The goddess didn't want disciples, she wanted equals, and so the few who passed became more than witches. They became keepers of secrets too dangerous for ordinary mortals, bound to Hecate by the scars of the trials they'd survived. Yet even for these chosen few, the price of knowledge never ended. For every spell they learned, Hecate demanded another piece of their humanity in return. And so the cycle continued, as it always had, at the crossroads where power and ruin meet. But while the trials of Colchis revealed Hecate's merciless side, her influence stretched far beyond punishing tests sometimes. She was the unseen hand guiding heroes to victory. One of the most famous examples unfolded when the legendary Jason and his Argonauts arrived in Colchis seeking the Golden Fleece. Though Jason was the face of the quest, it was Hecate's magic, channeled through her devoted pupil Medea, that truly tipped the scales. Medea, steeped in Hecate's dark arts, prepared an enchanted ointment for Jason, a gift from the goddess herself. This wasn't just any potion. It was a blend of rare herbs gathered under the dark moon, infused with Hecate's power to grant temporary invincibility. When Jason anointed his body and weapons with it, the magic made him impervious to fire and bronze alike, allowing him to conquer the fire-breathing bulls set as his first trial. Without it, he would have been reduced to ashes in moments, but Hecate's aid didn't stop there. Medea, acting as her proxy, also whispered the secrets of the sleepless dragon guarding the fleece, teaching Jason how to lull the beast into a trance with drugged herbs, another trick straight from Hecate's grimoire. Some versions of the myth even claim the goddess herself appeared in the shadows, her torches casting just enough light for Jason to steal the fleece undetected. This partnership between hero and witch reveals a fascinating duality in Hecate's nature. She wasn't merely a goddess of terrifying trials, she was also a patron of those bold enough to seek her favor. Jason's success came at a price, of course. Medea's help bound him to her in ways that would later unravel in tragedy. But in that moment, Hecate's magic proved that even the mightiest heroes sometimes needed a touch of the divine to tip fate in their favor. And so, as the Argo sailed away with its prize, the unseen threads of Hecate's influence lingered on Jason's skin, in Medea's whispered spells, and in the quiet understanding that no great quest was ever truly accomplished without crossing paths with the goddess of the crossroads. Now let's step into the shadows of Sparta, where the moon itself seemed to bow to Hecate's power. Here, during the eerie hush of a lunar eclipse, the Spartans performed a ritual so striking it revealed just how deeply they feared and revered the goddess of witchcraft. Black puppies, symbols of the underworld, were led to Crossroads under the darkened sky, their sacrifice meant to appease Hecate's hunger. This wasn't just superstition. The Spartans understood eclipses as moments when the boundary between worlds grew thin, and Hecate, ever the guardian of liminal spaces, demanded recognition. The choice of black puppies was deliberate. Their color mirrored the abyss, and their youth symbolized purity, a stark contrast to the chthonic forces they were offered to. As the moon vanished, so too did the puppies' lives. Their blood spilled to ensure Hecate's favor and the restoration of cosmic order. But why puppies and why eclipses? Hecate's ties to the moon ran deep. Often conflated with Selene, the moon goddess, she wielded lunar magic shaping tides, dreams, and even madness. The eclipse, a celestial omen, was her domain, a time when her influence peaked. By sacrificing to her in that fleeting darkness, the Spartans acknowledged her as the unseen hand behind both celestial and earthly balance. The ritual also hinted at Hecate's dual role as nurturer and destroyer. Puppies, loyal and innocent, were creatures she herself was said to cherish, yet their sacrifice underscored her chthonic demands. It was a paradox. To honor her, one had to surrender what was precious. This practice, though grim, cemented her reputation as a goddess who granted protection only when met with unwavering devotion. And so, as the moon re-emerged from shadow, the Spartans believed their offerings had sealed a pact. Hecate's torches would guide them through the unseen dangers ahead, her favor bought not with gold, but with blood and moonlit reverence. Few rites capture her complexity so vividly, a goddess who ruled the crossroads between light and dark, life and death, demanding tribute under the very sky she commanded. Now, let's turn our gaze to Athens, where the veil between the living and the dead grew thin each month under Hecate's watchful eyes. Here, on the darkest night of the lunar cycle, ordinary citizens would prepare humble meals, bread, eggs, even scraps of fish, and carry them to the crossroads, those eerie meeting points of paths and fates. This was the Demeter, a sacred supper not for the living, but for the restless dead who wandered under Hecate's torchlight. The Athenians knew the crossroads as Hecate's domain, a place where spirits gathered and the goddess herself stood guard. Leaving food there wasn't just an offering, it was a bargain. By feeding the hungry ghosts, they hoped to placate them, ensuring these spectral visitors wouldn't linger or bring misfortune to their homes. The act was simple yet profound, a shared meal with the unseen, mediated by the goddess who ruled the boundaries between worlds. But why crossroads? To the ancient Greeks, these intersections were liminal spaces, neither here nor there, making them perfect conduits for the dead. Hecate, ever the guardian of thresholds, presided over them, her three-faced statues marking the spot where offerings should be placed. The food itself was often humble, yet symbolic: garlic to repel evil, honey for sweetness in the afterlife, and sometimes even small cakes shaped like crescent moons nodding to her lunar ties. What's fascinating is how this practice echoes into modern pagan traditions. Today, many witches and devotees still honor Hecate's Demeter, leaving offerings at crossroads or their own altars. Some use it as a time to commune with ancestors, while others see it as a way to cleanse their homes of lingering negativity. The core remains the same, an acknowledgement of Hecate's power over the unseen, and a gesture of respect to those who dwell in her shadowy realm. So the next time you pass a crossroads at night, remember, you might be walking in the footsteps of ancient Athenians who understood that some debts are paid not with coins, but with crumbs, and that Hecate's favor often comes in the quiet act of remembering the forgotten. But let's step away from the crossroads for a moment and into the halls of myth, where another story unfolds, one of mentorship turned to rivalry. Circe, the famed enchantress of Aea, was once Hecate's most devoted student, learning the secrets of herbs, poisons, and transformation at the goddess's side. Under Hecate's guidance, Circe mastered the art of bending men into beasts, weaving spells as easily as she spun fate itself. Yet as time passed, their paths diverged in a way that would redefine the boundaries of magic itself. Circe's rejection of Hecate's darker teachings wasn't just a personal choice, it was a cultural turning point. Where Hecate embraced the shadows, Circe sought to refine her craft, distancing herself from the raw, untamed power of necromancy and curses. This split mirrored a growing divide in ancient Greek thought. Magic that healed or enchanted was tolerated, even admired, while the kind that trafficked with the dead or brought ruin was feared and condemned. Hecate's magic, rooted in the liminal and the forbidden, became a litmus test for what society deemed too far. The irony: Circe's own legend is steeped in transgression, turning men into pigs, defying gods, and living in deliberate isolation. Yet her story was softened over time, recast as that of a lonely sorceress who ultimately aided heroes like Odysseus. Hecate, meanwhile, remained untamed, her name whispered with a mix of reverence and dread. This contrast reveals a deeper truth. The line between acceptable and forbidden witchcraft was never about power alone, but who wielded it and how. For modern witches, this schism still resonates. Some embrace Hecate's unchained magic, working with the dead and the damned, while others, like Circe, focus on healing or harmony. Yet both paths owe their roots to the same source, the goddess who walks the razor's edge between light and dark. And perhaps that's the real lesson here. Magic, like the gods themselves, refuses to be neatly categorized. Now, as we prepare to delve into the next chapter, keep this tension in mind, because Hecate's stories are far from black and white, and the choices of her followers only deepen the mystery. Now, let's wander deeper into the shadows, where even a goddess faces impossible choices. There's a tale whispered among Hecate's devotees, one that reveals the weight of her role as the keeper of cosmic balance. It begins on a night when the veil between worlds grew thin, and a desperate mother's prayer pierced the silence. Her name was Elpis, a mortal woman whose child had been stolen by a vengeful spirit. With no one else to turn to, she knelt at a crossroads, offering her last loaf of bread and a lock of her hair to Hecate. The goddess heard her plea, but here was the dilemma. The spirit holding the child was no ordinary phantom. It was a soul wronged by Elpis's own ancestors, bound by an ancient oath of vengeance. To intervene would mean unraveling a thread of fate woven centuries before. Hecate stood at the threshold, her torches flickering with the tension of the choice. As the key-bearer, she guarded the laws of the unseen world, laws that demanded balance. Yet as the goddess who answered those who called her name, she felt the pull of compassion. For 3 nights she weighed the scales, while Elpis's cries grew fainter. In the end, Hecate did something unexpected. She didn't break the cosmic order, nor did she abandon the mortal. Instead, she appeared to Elpis in a dream, guiding her to a hidden grove where a plant with silver leaves grew, one that could pacify spirits without destroying them. The catch: Elpis would have to face the phantom herself, offering not just her child's safety, but a vow to right the ancestral wrong. This story shows Hecate not as a distant arbiter, but as a teacher of hard truth. She rarely hands mortals easy victories. Instead, she gives them the tools to navigate the darkness, if they're brave enough to use them. It's a reminder that even gods operate within mysteries deeper than we can fathom, and that justice sometimes wears the face of compromise. As we turn the page to the next story, remember, Hecate's lessons often lie in the choices she doesn't make for us, but guides us to make ourselves. But history holds darker chapters where devotion to Hecate came at a deadly cost. In the small Greek village of Antheia, under the shadow of rising Christianity, whispers of witchcraft began to spread like wildfire. Among the accused was a woman named Lysandra, a priestess who tended Hecate's shrine at the edge of town. To the villagers, her midnight rituals, leaving offerings of honey and garlic at the crossroads, were no longer sacred traditions, but proof of heresy. Lysandra's fate was sealed when a child fell ill after picking flowers near the shrine. fear turned to fury and the mob demanded justice. No one listened as she explained that the child had simply eaten poisonous berries or that her prayers to Hecate were for protection, not curses. The local bishop, eager to stamp out pagan remnants, declared her a servant of darkness. On a moonless night, they bound her to a stake, kindling the flames as she chanted Hecate's name until the end. This tragic tale mirrors countless real persecutions across Europe, where healers and keepers of old gods were branded witches. Hecate's followers, once revered as guides between worlds, became targets of fear. Yet even in death, Lysandra's story endured, a whispered warning of how easily faith can twist into fanaticism. As the smoke cleared over Anthea, something unexpected happened. The shrine's torches, though trampled, refused to go out. Villagers claimed they burned without fuel for 3 nights, a silent defiance that sent even the bishop fleeing. Some say Hecate herself was answering, not with vengeance but with a reminder. Fire can destroy a priestess, but not the truth she served. Now, let's step into a quieter transformation where Hecate's legacy took an unexpected turn under Rome's rule. As the tides of history shifted, so too did the face of Hecate. When Rome absorbed Greece into its vast empire, the goddess of witchcraft underwent a quiet but profound transformation. No longer the fearsome mistress of ghosts and dark magic, she was reborn as Trivia, the gentle guardian of Crossroads. The Romans, ever practical, softened her edges, blending her with their own deities to make her more palatable. Where Hecate once commanded spectral hounds and wielded torches in the underworld, Trivia became a tamer figure, associated with travelers and household protection. Her 3 faces remained, but now they watched over mundane paths rather than the boundary between life and death. Roman poets like Ovid painted her as a helpful guide, far removed from the eerie rituals of her Greek past. Even her name, Trivia, hinted at this shift derived from the Latin for 3 roads. It stripped away the mystique of her original title, yet traces of her old power lingered. At night, offerings were still left at Crossroads, though now they were simple cakes instead of blood and bones. Some whispered that the old Hecate still walked beneath the surface, waiting for those who knew how to call her true name. The Romans might have tried to domesticate her, but the goddess of magic was never one to fade quietly into the background. This reinvention reveals a fascinating truth about cultural exchange, how even the most formidable deities can be reshaped to fit new beliefs, yet never fully lose their essence. Now, let's unravel a tale where Hecate's 3 forms reveal their divergent wisdom now. Let's step into the shadow of a crossroads where fate itself takes 3 forms. A wealthy merchant named Lycus, desperate to save his failing trade routes, journeyed deep into the night to seek Hecate's guidance. At a lonely crossroads, the air grew thick with the scent of cypress and iron. Suddenly, 3 figures emerged from the mist, each a face of the goddess. To his left stood the maiden, radiant as moonlight on fresh snow. Before him loomed the mother, her cloak woven with stars and roots. And to his right, the crone waited, her eyes like smoldering embers in the dark. Lycus fell to his knees, offering gold and spices. The maiden spoke first, her voice like a silver bell. "Follow the eastern winds, and your ships will overflow with silk." But the mother interrupted, pressing a pomegranate into his palm. "Turn south, plant orchards, and your wealth will grow from the earth itself." Then the crone laughed, the sound like dry leaves scraping stone. "Abandon the sea forever or drown with your greed." Torn between 3 futures, Lycus hesitated, a fatal mistake. By dawn, he had chosen none. His ships sank in a storm, his fields withered, and his gold turned to dust in his hands. The lesson: Hecate's truths are never singular. To seek her counsel is to face the weight of choice itself, where every path demands a sacrifice. This tale reminds us that wisdom wears many faces, and the crossroads offer no easy answers. Next, we'll see how Hecate's legacy intertwines with the very light of the moon now. Let's turn our gaze upward to the silver glow of the moon, where 2 ancient goddesses become one. Hecate's story takes a celestial turn as she merges with Selene, the Titan goddess of the moon. In the quiet of the night, their identities began to blur, Hecate's torches reflecting Selene's luminous glow, their powers weaving together like threads of moonlight. This fusion wasn't accidental. The Greeks saw Hecate as a goddess of transitions and what symbolizes change more than the shifting phases of the moon. Over time, Hecate absorbed Selene's lunar majesty, adding another layer to her already complex nature. The maiden, mother, and crone, once symbols of Hecate's dominion over life's stages, now mirrored the moon's own cycle, waxing, full, and waning. This triad became the foundation of her modern triple goddess image, embraced by witches and pagans today. But why did this merger endure? Perhaps because it gave Hecate a cosmic dimension, tying her magic to the rhythms of the heavens. Where Selene was the moon's gentle light, Hecate became its shadowy wisdom, the dark between the stars, the secrets whispered during the new moon. Together, they embodied the full spectrum of feminine power, radiant and mysterious, nurturing and fierce. This blending of deities didn't just reshape Hecate, it redefined how we see divine femininity. Next, we'll uncover how philosophers transformed her into something even grander. As the threads of myth and philosophy intertwine, Hecate's story takes an extraordinary leap into the realm of cosmic mystery. In the Chaldean oracles, a collection of sacred texts from the late ancient world, she undergoes a stunning transformation, no longer just a goddess of witchcraft but a radiant cosmic force. Here, the Neoplatonists reimagined her as the world soul, the divine spark that animates all creation. Picture her not just as a figure at the crossroads, but as the very axis around which the universe turns. This philosophical rebirth elevated Hecate to something almost beyond myth. She became the intermediary between the mortal and divine, a luminous bridge between earth and the ineffable realms beyond. The oracles describe her as the holder of the keys, unlocking not just the underworld but the secrets of existence itself. Her torches now illuminated not just dark paths but the hidden truths of the cosmos. What's fascinating is how this vision of Hecate blended her ancient chthonic roots with lofty philosophical ideals. The same goddess who guided ghosts also became the guide to enlightenment. Neoplatonists saw her as the force that could purify the soul, leading initiates through spiritual trials, much like she once led Demeter through the shadows. It's a testament to her enduring power that even philosophers seeking the highest truths found wisdom in her mysteries. This cosmic iteration of Hecate didn't erase her older roles, it deepened them. She remained the witch's patron, but now also the philosopher's muse. And as we'll soon see, this duality would echo through the ages now. Let's step into the present, where Hecate's ancient whispers still echo in the rituals of modern witches. Far from being confined to dusty scrolls, her presence thrives in the practices of those who walk the path of magic today. Among Wiccans and eclectic practitioners alike, Hecate is revered not just as a mythic figure, but as a living force, a guide, protector, and catalyst for transformation. One of the most common ways witches honor her is through protective spells. Picture this: a practitioner lights 3 black candles at a crossroads, each flame representing Hecate's triple aspect. They might carve her name or symbols into the wax, then anoint the candles with oils like cypress or myrrh, scents sacred to her. As the smoke curls upward, they whisper invocations, calling on Hecate to shield them from harm. It's a direct line to the same goddess who once guarded the boundaries between worlds. But her role doesn't end there. Hex-breaking rituals often invoke Hecate's power to unravel curses or negative energy. A witch might create a Hecate's wheel, a strophalos, or spiral symbol using salt or chalk, then walk its path counterclockwise to dissolve malicious magic. Others leave offerings of garlic, honey, or eggs at crossroads, a practice echoing ancient Athenian traditions, asking Hecate to sever toxic ties. Then there are the deeper, more personal invocations. During the dark moon, witches might perform Hecate's supper, setting a plate of food outside their door to honor her and the restless dead. This isn't just superstition. It's a bridge between the mundane and the mystical, a way to seek her wisdom in times of transition or shadow work. What's striking is how adaptable these practices are. A solitary witch in a city apartment might use a simple key Hecate symbol as a focal point for meditation, while a coven in a forest might enact elaborate rites under her torchlight. Yet all share one thread, the recognition of Hecate as a mentor of hidden truths and a guardian of thresholds. As we'll see next, this enduring reverence has even shaped how she appears beyond the circle of practitioners, in books, screens, and the broader tapestry of pop culture. But let's shift our gaze from the sacred to the screen, where Hecate's legacy takes on a very different form. Pop culture has a habit of flattening ancient deities into familiar tropes, and the goddess of witchcraft is no exception. Whether she's lurking in the pages of best-selling novels or haunting the edges of fantasy films, Hecate often gets boxed into the role of the spooky witch, a far cry from the complex, multifaceted figure we've come to know. Take Madeline Miller's Circe, for example. While the novel beautifully explores the life of the sun god's daughter, Hecate appears briefly as a shadowy mentor, teaching Circe the art of pharmakeia, potions and herbs. It's a nod to her historical role, yes, but one that leans heavily into her mysterious, otherworldly aura without delving into her broader significance as a guardian of Crossroads or a guide for souls. On television, Hecate's portrayals skew even darker. In shows like Supernatural or American Horror Story, she's often reduced to a villainous archetype, a harbinger of chaos or a literal demon. These versions cherry-pick the most sensational aspects of her myth, like her connection to ghosts and magic, while ignoring her wisdom, her justice, or her ties to the moon cycles. Even in children's media like Hilda, Hecate-inspired figures are depicted as eerie, cryptic beings, reinforcing the idea that witchcraft is inherently sinister. Why does this matter? Because these portrayals shape how modern audiences perceive not just Hecate, but witchcraft itself. By framing her as a one-dimensional boogeyman, pop culture sidelines her role as a teacher, a protector, and a symbol of empowerment, especially for women who reclaim her as a feminist icon. It's a missed opportunity to explore her true duality, a deity who is as much about healing and transformation as she is about the uncanny. That said, there are glimmers of nuance. In games like Hades, Hecate's influence subtly colors characters like Melanie, blending her mythic roots with fresh storytelling. And indie comics or pagan-authored novels increasingly depict her with the depth she deserves, as a goddess who holds the keys to both darkness and light. So the next time you spot Hecate in a movie or book, ask yourself, is this the full story or just a flicker of her torch dimmed by the same old stereotypes? Up next, we'll see how modern devotees are pushing back against these cliches by honoring her in a way that would make the ancients proud. Now let's turn to a living tribute to Hecate that bridges ancient myth and modern compassion, her sacred dogs. Long associated with her ghostly processions and protective presence, hounds have been symbols of Hecate's power for millennia. Ancient Greeks believed her howling pack heralded her approach, their barks echoing at crossroads where the veil between worlds grew thin. These dogs weren't just companions, they were guardians of boundaries, much like the goddess herself. Today, pagan communities are reviving this bond in a heartfelt way by rescuing and honoring dogs in Hecate's name. Organizations and devotees worldwide dedicate efforts to saving stray and abandoned hounds, seeing them as earthly embodiments of her sacred animals. Rituals often include offerings to shelters or fostering black dogs, a nod to Hecate's traditional connection with dark-furred companions. Some even name their rescued pets after mythical hounds from her legends, weaving the ancient into the everyday. This practice isn't just symbolic, it's a direct response to historical superstitions. Black dogs, once feared as omens in folklore, now find sanctuary in Hecate's name, flipping old prejudices into acts of reverence. Devotees share stories of how these animals seem to sense her presence, reacting to unseen forces during rituals or standing watch at thresholds, just as their mythic counterparts once did. By tying dog rescue to Hecate's worship, modern pagans honor her dual role as both a guide and a protector. It's a reminder that her magic isn't confined to spells or shadows. It lives in acts of kindness that echo her ancient care for all who wander, whether spirit or stray. And as we'll see in our final story, this blend of devotion and action reaches its peak in a quiet midnight ritual, one that brings Hecate's mysteries full circle. Now, let's step into the quiet hush of midnight, where the boundary between the ordinary and the mystical grows thin. Here, at a lonely crossroads, a modern devotee of Hecate prepares to honor the goddess in a ritual that bridges centuries. The air is cool, the moon hangs low, and the only sound is the whisper of leaves underfoot, a scene unchanged since ancient times. With careful hands, the devotee lays out offerings, honey, garlic, and a small loaf of dark bread, just as the Greeks once left at her shrines. A candle flickers to life, its flame casting long shadows, a humble torch in the spirit of Hecate's own. Then comes the prayer, spoken not from a book but from the heart, weaving gratitude with requests for guidance. It's a conversation with the divine, raw and personal, echoing the intimacy of countless devotees before them. This isn't just reenactment, it's lived spirituality. The devotee feels the weight of tradition but makes it their own, perhaps adding a photo of a lost loved one or a token from their daily life. In this moment, Hecate isn't a distant myth but a presence, her three faces watching. The maiden's curiosity, the mother's compassion, the crone's wisdom. As the ritual ends, the offerings remain a silent pact between mortal and goddess. The devotee walks away, but the crossroads linger in their mind, a reminder that Hecate's magic isn't confined to the past. It thrives wherever someone pauses at a threshold, literal or metaphorical, and dares to ask for her light in the darkness. And with that, our journey through these 30 stories comes full circle, from Hecate's Titan origins to the whispered prayers of today. But her mysteries don't end here. If these tales have sparked your curiosity, why not share your own thoughts below? Which story resonated most with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives into mythology's most captivating figures. Until next time, may your own crossroads be illuminated. As we draw the threads of these 30 stories together, Hecate's presence lingers like torchlight at the edges of our understanding, both ancient and alive. She is the goddess who defies simple definition, standing where paths diverge, where the known meets the unknown. Her legacy isn't just in the myths we've explored, but in the way she embodies the power of boundaries, of choices, and of the magic that thrives in liminal spaces. Think of her the next time you stand at a crossroads, literal or metaphorical. What offering would you leave? A coin, a whispered wish, a moment of gratitude? Hecate's mysteries invite us to pause, to honor the thresholds in our own lives, and to recognize the magic in transitions, whether it's the end of one chapter or the uncertain start of another. Her stories remind us that rebellion isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the quiet act of holding power where others see emptiness. From the Titanomachy to modern witchcraft, Hecate's torch has guided those who dare to walk the unseen path. If these tales have illuminated something for you, sparked curiosity, comfort, or even a challenge, let's keep the conversation going. Drop a comment below sharing which story resonated most or how you'd honor Hecate in your own way. And if you've enjoyed this journey into the world of myth and magic, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the gods and goddesses who shape our stories. Until then, may Hecate's wisdom light your way, especially when the road ahead is dark.